Hi, welcome to the 34th episode of the High School Basketball Happenings podcast, a podcast that candidly discusses all the hot topics taking place in the high school basketball world. We are your co-hosts, Zain Motani and Paul Biancardi. Today on the podcast, we are lucky to be joined by Drew Hanlen. Drew is an NBA skills coach and consultant, and Drew played his college basketball at Belmont. Over the years, Drew has worked with many NBA players on their skills, including but not limited to Bradley Beal, Jayson Tatum, and Joel Embiid. It would take me about an hour to list all the players that Drew has worked with. And he is the CEO of Puresweat Basketball.
Drew, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to join you guys today.
Well, I remember when you were a player at Belmont, so that's where we're going to go back to first. Let's start at the beginning. What made you choose Belmont?
I always tell players that are high school athletes that are going through the recruiting process that you need to choose a school based on three things. The first thing is you have to absolutely love the people that are around that program, meaning the players, the coaches, the faculty, the teachers, everybody, but really the players and the coaches, because you're going to spend 80 to 90% of your time traveling with them, practicing with them, and study hall with them. Those are going to be your family for the rest of your life. So the first thing is, I always tell them, make sure that you feel like you fit in and you are part of that culture. Second thing is, I always say that you want to pick a school that you are going to like, even if you got hurt. And so I know that people don't like to think of it like that, but a lot of people choose schools based on just basketball. I want to choose a school that fits me, even if I got hurt. So if I got hurt, I would still enjoy the university. The university would still, prepare me for the next chapter of my life. For me, I always like to say you want to have a fun 4 years, but you also want that school to prepare you for the next 40 years. And that's what Belmont did with me. They had a great academic program, especially with entrepreneurship, which was my major. And so that went into the deciding factor. And then the last thing is you want to have a program that fits your style of play, because you don't want to just pick the biggest name school that's recruiting you. You want to pick the best fit for you. And so you have to pick a school that's really going to complement your game so that not only can you contribute to winning, but also so that you feel like you're playing your best brand of basketball. You'll see players all the time that go through the recruiting process, and what they do is they make the mistake of listing off the biggest schools that are even talking to them. And then when it comes time to pick, what school that they're going to go to, maybe they don't have all those offers that they thought they were going to have. And then they're almost embarrassed to choose the right fit school because they've been telling everybody that they have all these big names. And so I know when I was getting recruited, I did have a lot of high major schools that were recruiting me as far as, calling me, sending me letters, text messaging me, but I didn't have all the offers of those schools. And so when people like yourself reached out to me and said, hey, who's recruiting you? I was giving them a real list. I was saying, Penn was recruiting me and Belmont was recruiting me and Mizzou was recruiting me. And I had all these schools. I wasn't listing off, the schools that maybe have reached out to me once or twice, because for me, that honesty allowed me to choose Belmont on signing day, instead of a lot of these kids who they almost trap themselves where they feel embarrassed to choose a mid-major school or a low-major school that's actually still a great school that has, a chance to compete for conference championships, has a chance to earn them a free college degree. And so that's the biggest advice I would say is make sure that you love the players, coaches, staff, all the people at that school. Second thing, make sure that school is not only going to give you a good 4 years, of experience of college, but also prepare you for the next 40. And the final thing is make sure the style of play fits you so that you can be appreciated as a basketball player and feel like you fit in instead of having to transfer portal, which just keeps growing each and every year.
Well, that's awesome advice and great perspective. And that's why we have so many transfers, because guys don't do what you just said, and we'll have more transfers in the years to come. You and I talk a lot about other people's game. Describe your game.
Yeah, so I mean, my game was I was a shooter first and foremost, and a winner. I think those are the two biggest adjectives that would describe my game. When I was in high school, shot over 40% from three for my career. I went 105 and 15 in my high school career. I won a state championship. I was the all-time winningest player in my high school program. Then I went to Belmont, and at Belmont, my junior year, we won 30 games, first time in program history. My senior year, we won 20 tournament in Belmont history. And then I also shot 48.2% from three, which was, I think top 35 all time in Division I history. So I could really shoot it. And then I just did anything that my team needed me to do to win. And a lot of times that just boiled down to leading. When my team was, going through a rough patch, I would be the guy huddling the team up and rallying them and telling them, hey, we need to lock in for a stop. On offense, I always just made the right play, whether that was somebody on my team like Ian Clark, who won a championship with the Warriors a couple years back. He was one of my teammates. If he got, hot, I made sure that we kept running every play to him. It was not about me. It wasn't about us spreading the wealth. It was about us winning ball games. And so, there'd be other times where we had a great big and Mick Hedgebeth where, he had a mismatch down low and we just feed the beast all night long. So, that was what I did. I just wanted to win. And then I also had the ability to knock down shots, which came from hours and hours of work in the gym. I shot 1,000 shots every morning. And that really led to my success on the court as a player.
Yeah, the we play versus the me play.
For sure. And I think that's something that people don't realize. Like, I'm a skill development coach, and people always ask me, like, what's the biggest skill a player can learn? And I always tell them the first thing that you should really ask yourself as a player is, how can I impact winning? And for every player, that's different. For me, the way that I could impact winning was by being a leader and being a knockdown shooter and running the team, these little intangible things. For other players, they might be a lockdown defender, and that's what their biggest contribution to the team is. For other players, they might be somebody that really sets great screens and gets other guys open. So if I was somebody that, was in high school, instead of trying to become the best scorer possible, and scoring could be some guys, ticket to earn college scholarships and make the pros. But I would constantly ask myself, how can I impact winning? And find skill or a few skills that help your team win games. That's when you have true value. And that's what you're seeing in the NBA nowadays. You see guys like Bam Adebayo, who gotten big time contracts not because he's a great shooting big, but because he makes his teammates better. Draymond Green, a few years back with the Warriors, was one of the first kind of guys that really got a lot of credit. An all-star type player for being a guy that was a scrappy defender and was a guy that facilitated on offense. It wasn't like he was the one scoring. It was Steph and Clay and KD and all these other guys, but Draymond was making their job easier, and he was rewarded with not only a big contract, but also with all the accolades that come with winning, which was all-star performance and then championships.
So Drew, that's absolutely sage advice for everyone listening, regardless of what level they're playing at. Like, do your job and figure out how you can impact the game. You mentioned, you're one of the most well-known basketball skills trainers or coaches out there. What made you want to transition into that role and do it at an elite level? Was this something you knew you wanted to do from childhood? You mentioned you were in the entrepreneurship program at Belmont. Was it after you were done playing college? Was there a single moment where you said, damn, like, this is what I want to do for the next X years?
To be honest with you, I was randomly approached by a sixth grade dad, and I was working on my game, and I had my hands on my knees. I was dripping in sweat, no rebounder, just me, a ball and a rim. And the parent came over to me and actually kind of startled me, put his hand on my shoulder and said, hey, listen, I've never seen somebody work this hard. He said, can I pay you $20 to put my son through that exact workout? And I did it. Obviously I was 16 years old at the time. So somebody offering me a job that was $20 an hour and I got to be on a basketball court was like heaven to me. And so, but really I fell in love with basketball training because it combined two things I love. I love helping people, and I love the game of basketball, and that's what basketball training is. And so that's what started it all. And then, what helped my career really take off was I started working with a freshman, Bradley Beal, and helped him go from unranked to ranked. I think his first ranking was like 8th in the country. And he went from 8 points a game to 24 points a game as freshman to a sophomore year in high school. And as Brad's career took off, my career took off alongside it. So, my biggest thing is I just don't like letting people down. I want to be able to help them as much as possible. And so once I do work with a player, whether that's a third grade girl that's just picking up a basketball for the first time, or whether that's an NBA All-Star that's trying to become a Hall of Famer, I take the same pride in, getting in real work, working on game skills that's going to translate and help them be a better basketball player when they step there, during the games.
Well said. Well said. You and I have a lot of discussions about trainers, and we know that trainers are not coaches. What is the role of a great basketball trainer? And what's the difference, Drew, between a trainer and a coach? Are there certain things that you try to stay away from because you're not their coach?
Yeah, for sure. First off, I would say all the good skills coaches, which I call skills coaches, are coaches. Trainers should be coaches. They should be teaching the game. The unfortunate thing is my industry sucks in the aspect of there are a lot of trainers that are out there training kids to do stuff that never is going to ever occur in games. And so, the discussions that I have is just, I tell players all the time when they ask me, what should I be working on? I say, what do you do in games? And then they answer the question. I say, get really good at that. And that's what we should be asking ourselves as skills coaches or trainers or whatever you want to call us, is how can we prepare that player to succeed in the role that they're going to be in for their team in games? That's really the question I constantly ask myself. So if I'm training Jayson Tatum, Joel Embiid, Bradley Beal, Zach LaVine, those are all my clients, but they're all star players, 4 of the top 20 scorers in the NBA. Those guys, we are going to be working on isolation moves. We are going to be working on scoring techniques, etc. But when I'm working with some of my other clients, a guy like Myers Leonard, he fits a role for the Heat. He's going to be a good screen setter. He's going to be a pick and pop guy that has to make shots. He's going to be a guy that plays off of short rolls and has to drive and kick to Tyler Hero or to, Jimmy Butler or whoever their shooters are spotted around the perimeter. If I'm working with a guy like Shimi Olajay, he's a guy that's more of a 3-and-D guy. So he's focused on defense first and then making, open shots, making contested shots and attacking closeouts. So even though he has the ability to do all the same skills that Jayson Tatum does, he can do all the side steps and step backs and spins and all this kind of stuff. We're not working on those things because that's not what the Boston Celtics need him to do. And so I would say the biggest difference between coaching and training is that coaching is, when I look at coaching as leading a team. So think about schemes, adjustments, offensive rotations, defensive rotations, X's and O's, basically taking the players and putting them in the best positions possible so that that team can win games. Whereas training should be preparing the players for the role that's going to help that team, be able to win as many games as possible. So ideally the trainer and the coach are working together where the coach is saying, this is how I'm going to utilize this player so that we can have the best chance at our team winning games. And then the trainer should prepare that player for that role and help them continue to grow so they can expand their role over time.
Yeah, knowing your role is so important. And I just see, as you see, so many people call themselves trainers. They don't even call themselves skill coaches. And we see some of the things you post on social media at Drew Hanlen on Twitter about some people just, as you would call them, clown drills.
It's funny. The thing that I find funny is there are times where I will literally post a tweet that says, no clown drills. And there are trainers that are offended by my tweet that just says no clown drills. And so I try to explain to them, if you're offended by my tweet, that means you consider yourself a clown and you're doing clown drills, because I never directed any tweet at anybody. All I said was, don't do clown drills, work on game skills, get game results. So if trainers are offended when I say don't do clown drills, it just means they realize that they should be wearing face paint out there because they're doing drills that do not directly translate to game improvement.
Drew, you talked about like the importance of doing drills and exercises that emulate what you're going to do in a game because everyone's role is different. Let's maybe connect. I want to piggyback off of that and connect this back to high school. What is maybe the biggest mistake that you see high school players make on the court while they're practicing that's stifling their development? And then also off the court, what's the one thing that they're doing too much of or not doing enough of that's going to prevent them from being the best version of themselves at 15, 16, 17 years old?
2 words: mastery and purpose. What I mean by that is this: there are not enough players that are mastering skills that actually allow them to have strengths that are unstoppable or that, really impact their team's ability to win games. So you'll see a lot of players that shoot shots, but they don't master their mechanics so that they can become a knockdown shooter. You see a lot of players that maybe, work on one-on-one moves, but they don't master the ability to just read defenders and make the right play. You'll see a lot of players that work on finishing moves, but they don't have the ability to master finishes that allow them to have different touch and different angles and different approaches around the rim. So mastery is important. If you don't master a skill, you're not sure what's going to show up during game time. So mastery is something that not enough high school players and youth players kind of lock in. I always say depth is more important than width. And I think that that's lost at the high school level and youth level, whereas they try to get better at everything instead of getting better at one thing at a time that they can really hang their hat on when it comes game time. And then the other thing is purpose. I think that, you should constantly be asking yourself, am I going to do this in games? And if you are going to do it in games, how is it going to unfold in games so that you can better prepare yourself for that moment in the game? And so that's something I don't see a lot of players do is they're out there just randomly working on, today I feel like working on ball handling. Today I feel like working on my step back. Today I feel like working on this, instead of saying, hey, listen, what are the things that other teams can take advantage of? What are my weaknesses that other teams can take advantage of? Or what are my strengths that could get me a college scholarship if I continue to sharpen them and eventually master them like we talked about earlier? So those two words are so important. You have to be able to, one, work with purpose, which means work on the game skills that you're actually going to do in games so that you can get game results. And then number two, continue to work on those skills until you master them so that you can consistently rely on them when it comes game time.
I'm about to go to the whiteboard behind me and write down mastery and purpose and try to apply it not only on the court, but off the court as well. I'm jazzed up right now.
No, it's so true. When I talk to all the best players in the country, as you guys know, I do rankings for a living, and every player wants to prove what they can do versus improve the game, try to master and play with a purpose. Drew, you knocked that one out of the park. All right, with social media, everybody's a trainer, everybody's a coach, everybody's a scout. I get asked all the time, who should I play for in the summer? Like, which program? And I say, I don't care what program you play for. Go find a great coach who's a greater teacher. We talked about coaches being guys that have schemes and strategy. But to me, part of being a great coach, or the biggest part of being a great coach, is being a great teacher, somebody who can correct and give feedback, not only tell players what to do, but why to do it. What's your advice to parents who are looking for a trainer?
My advice for parents that are looking for a trainer, a coach for an AAU program, or, what high school to go to if you have the option to go to multiple high schools, is going to be the same. Just find somebody that can mentor and develop your son or daughter. And the reason I say mentor, that means help them grow, help them evolve, tell them not what they want to hear, but what they need to hear. My biggest mentor in basketball has been my high school coach, Jay Blossom. And the thing that made him special was that he held me accountable for what I needed to do to get me to where I wanted to be. And so I'll give you a little story. So my freshman year in high school, I come in and, I'm one of those kids. I was a top 10 player in the state of Missouri for my class. And, I'm obviously a D1 prospect. I started getting college scholarships when I was a sophomore. But my freshman year, I was an elite scorer. I mean, one of the better scorers, one of the better shooters. I think I shot 54% from three my freshman year in high school. So I was really skilled on the offensive end, but I was not committed to playing defense. And so there were nights where I would be in a bad gap position. One player, the on-ball defender, would get beat. I wouldn't be in a proper gap. The player would drive to the rim and finish, and I would get subbed out. And I immediately wanted to complain to him, well, the on-ball defender, if he didn't get beat, then I wouldn't even have had to help. If everybody just guards their own man, we'll all be good. And I didn't understand the concept of team defense, the we is more important than me. And he benched me. And then we'd go to practice, and I'd play all-time defense. So we'd play make it, take it. Only if I made it, I never got to take it. I was all-time defense. And if I got to stop, I didn't get to go on offense. I was playing defense. And so I remember even having conversations with my parents, and I'd say, hey, Coach Blossom, he's tripping. He's holding me back. He's not playing me as many minutes as I should be playing. It's obvious to everyone that I'm, one of the best offensive threats on this team. I don't get it. I don't get it. Offense is 50% of the game. Defense is 50% of the game. I'm clearly better on offense. I don't understand why he values defense so much more. And so then I even was talking about should I go to a school where they'll let me drop 30 points a night and coach will play me regardless, if I play defense or not, like whatever. And I remember a conversation with my mom, and she was just like, hey, listen, what do you do most? And I said, play college basketball. What do you need to be able to do if you want to play college basketball at 5'11", average athlete? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to have to be able to play defense. And she's like, have you ever thought that really Coach Blossom is just helping you achieve what you want to achieve most, which is earn college scholarships and play the highest level basketball that you can possibly play? And when I changed my mindset to understanding, he wasn't holding me back. He was actually trying to help me and assist me to get where I wanted to go. And while it may have hurt the team in the short run, it helped us win a state championship. Allow players to do enough to get by. You have to hold them accountable to their highest level standards so they eventually can reach their potential. And so that's what I would tell players, just understand your coach isn't tripping. Just understand that your coach is trying to win games just like you're trying to win games. The key is finding somebody that can challenge you and push you and take you to a level that maybe you can't take yourself, without their guidance.
Excellent advice.
Drew, maybe one final question I have as we step away from the court. So we've largely been stuck inside during this quarantine period, and this is a question that we've asked a lot of the top players we've had on the podcast. So curious to ask it for you. What's maybe a hobby or skill or activity that you've been working on while we've been largely indoors that has nothing to do with basketball or film study or perfecting your craft or perfecting your your clients' crafts? Is there something that you've been working on that has nothing to do with your body or nothing to do with sport?
Well, my golf game went from like a high 80s. I was shooting in the high 80s, and now I'm shooting in the high 70s. So I trimmed about 10 strokes off my golf game. So, I was obsessive like a lot of others in the golf game, just because that was the only thing I could do that was COVID safe. So, again, me being obsessed with improvement, I was flying down or driving down to Orlando to get lessons from Brian Mogg, who's one of the top swing coaches in America. So I'm not one of those guys that just tells people, hey, on basketball, you need to hire a skills coach, because that's what I do. As soon as I wanted to improve my golf swing, I was not only just finding a local guy, I went all the way down to Orlando to find the best of the best. And so, I was taking lessons. I was the student instead of the teacher, and I learned a lot from him. And like I said, I've trimmed over 10 strokes on my golf game, and I've played, 4 of the last 5 rounds in the 70s, which is something that a lot of golfers that have played their entire life can't say they've done.
You may have a second career on the way.
I started a little late, but just know I've got all the Rucket Sport hack nets where you can hit the ball into the net in your own room. And I've got all the products that you could possibly have to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to improve my golf game. So that's one of my biggest things, is I'm obsessive with anything that I commit to. So my golf game has definitely grown a lot during this quarantine.
Well, I'm going to finish up with this one. Biggest adjustment for the high school player to go to college, and then from the college player to the NBA. What are the biggest adjustments when you go up in levels?
We'll talk about mentality and skill-wise. So high school to college, the mentality-wise, it's different. Is almost everyone at the college level wasn't all conference player, all state player. They were all, they all were 20-point game scorers, et cetera. So the biggest adjustment, I think, from high school to college is understanding that no longer are you the big fish in the small pond. Everyone can play the game of basketball. And so you have to find the little things that are going to help you stand out, earn playing time, et cetera. So that's the first mentality thing that I think is important for high school players jumping to college, is understanding that, they're not going to be able to just think about how you were as a freshman on varsity. And that's how you're going to be again when you make that next jump from, high school to college. You're now the freshman on varsity again. Only varsities now, the Division I basketball or whatever level they play. And then skill wise, I think the biggest thing is, to be honest with you, is the speed of the game changes when it comes to decision making. So if you're the gaps shrink faster. So if you see a driving angle, you've got to hit that gap right away. The shots, the closeouts happen quicker. So you got to be able to get your shot off quicker. The finishes are more highly contested. Guys are closing out more and finishing there's obviously more length, shot blockers. So everything happens a little bit faster, and there's more physicality, just better athletes all around, which helps kind of make the game play at a different pace. And so that's the biggest jump from high school to college. Now, the biggest jump from college to pro is a little bit different. When we go mentality, the first thing is you're getting drafted to a team for a specific need. Unless you're one of those lottery type guys that is just high potential, hey, we're just drafting you because we're a team that isn't winning games and we're just going to try to build our franchise around you. Unless you're one of those players, you're getting drafted just because you're a defender, or you're getting drafted just because you're a shooter, or you're getting drafted to fill a specific need or void for that team. That's a different mentality. So you have to be a specialist in the NBA. You all do it all kind of guys you're going to build a franchise or build a team around. And then skill wise, I think the biggest thing is just shooting, finishing, and decision making at the NBA level have to be, top notch, because shooting, elite shooters, those guys only have, 0.4 seconds to get their shot off. Those guys are being guarded differently. Finishing. Now, instead of driving down and shooting floaters or runners or Euro steps that look fancy, now you're going down and finishing against the Joel Embiids and Anthony Davises of the world that are great shot blockers, 7-footers that are just as athletic as you are. So I think the NBA skill-wise is just, again, shooting. Everybody has to be a knockdown shooter unless you're one of those few players that are such elite athletes that they can get away with not having a shot. We all know who those players are. I don't like putting players down, but there are a handful of guys in the NBA that have made it based on athleticism or, elite, kind of height or just, raw ability. But other than that, everybody's got to be a shot maker. You got to be able to finish, and you got to be able to make decisions, because if you can't make decisions, the coach can't trust you, and he's going to put you on the bench. If you can't make shots, the court's going to shrink. He's going to put you on the bench. And if you can't finish, you're going to be one-dimensional. Defense are going to run you off the line. And then again, you're not going to have any value, and your coach is going to put you on the bench. So those are the biggest things I would say, mentality-wise and skill-wise, translating from high school to college to the NBA.
Wow. Drew, this was fantastic. And thank you for your expertise and your time, and for the real and the relevant information for the high school player, the college player, and guys that are thinking about being pros. People can follow you on Twitter at Drew Hanlen. Tell us about your Puresweat Basketball app.
Yeah, we've got two things that I really put all my time and energy into. We've got a Puresweat Basketball training app, which is one of the top basketball apps in the world. It basically allows you to choose what you want to work on, how long you want to work, and we custom build workouts so that you can work with purpose, like we talked about. Everything has one ball. It's all game skills, and we help players, do the same workouts that I would do with my NBA clients. And then I've got the virtual basketball school, which is basically an online school. Think about the way you learn science, social studies, and math. Well, now you can learn about ball screens, pin downs, and isolation moves the same way. And so I built those things just because I wanted to give resources to everybody that didn't have the chance to be in the gym with me. And so, if there are players like me, I didn't have a trainer growing up, but I was one of those guys that constantly was searching for ways to improve. I wanted to help them, save them time. And so those are the two biggest resources that I put my time and energy to right now.
All right, check him out on Twitter at Drew Hanlen. Drew, thanks again.
Awesome. Appreciate y'all.